are Mighty May in Italian. So what I did first is to create some text. You just go to your text tool up here, um, click on the window and type what you need. Now you need to choose a font. This is something that'll always take some time. You need to choose a font that corresponds to the theme of your actual image. Since ours was kind of Italy and Rome, I found that Comic Sans MS worked well for me. You can see when you click on your text tool here that you'll have your various options for looking at your various fonts. So whatever the theme of the cover that you'll be doing, you'll have your own specific font that you'll want to use. And here you can use the type in the font size as well. So I chose 24. That worked well inside here. Now the first thing I want the reader to see is the name of the single, Nonti Skodar. So that's why I did this part of the text first, because I want the eye, the person's eye, when they actually view the image, to be drawn to the most important thing that I want them to see, which is Nonti Skodar, the name of the title. Okay, just going to delete this layer I created. So these are my Nonti Skodar layers inside here. You can see I have 3 of them. Now if I start to delete them, I've divided this up into 2 because I wanted the first part, Nonti Skodar, if I close Mighty May, to appear inside here. Now my first problem is when I created Nonti Skodar, I wanted to use a transfer mode, because if I, let's say, put this back to normal, I have my writing is just in pure white, so when you create it, it'll be in a certain color. But I wanted it to interact more, like it was nearly inscribed, like something, you know, on a Roman wall or inscribed into the actual spectrogram in this image. So a good way of doing that, a simple way, is using your transfer modes again. And I used a simple overlay which blends my title layer, text layer, to the layers below. So I just use a simple overlay. Now what happened then is that I just couldn't see it clearly enough, because when I want someone to read something, well, firstly, you know, it has to be clear. So what I needed to do is just I duplicated this layer another 2 times, and they all have the same transfer mode, just to make it, you know, stick out more. So it's most important that the viewer can actually read what you want them to read. Okay, so I did the same with Mighty May. I put this on a different layer because I wanted it to be below and Nonti Skodar. So I did the same technique, and then the only thing left to do was to actually do what we've been doing all along, which is quite simple. Just edit, transform, and rotate our text layers around to make them fit in line with the actual image in the background. So you could line these up. I just lined these up manually. It was the simplest thing to do. The top of the N and the top of the D with the straight line going across my image. And the last thing left to do, I put these all in a group just to keep things nice and clear, was just the name of the artist. So just in one text layer, I wrote the 2 names of the artists, Ana Molina and Raul Marquez, who performed this musical piece. And I simply just rotated around and lined them up in there, and applied a different type of transfer mode, which is just an exclusion transfer mode. Okay. Now, so that's the end of your cover. The most difficult thing is actually thinking about it beforehand, having a nice, you know, simple layout, using grids if you need to, and then lining everything up straight. So you can see that the name of my artist is lined up straight with the edge of this rectangle that's placed near the center, and my text is lining up straight as well, which will make things work out. And also I have quite a bit of white space, the black, as we mentioned before, representing loss, as in the lyrics of the song. So I'm leaving loads of white space there so the whole image isn't too cluttered. And also the font size of my two artists is smaller. It's just font size 12. It's because it's the secondary thing I wanted the eye to be drawn to. So the first thing people will read when they see this is Nonty Skodar My Dí Mé, is the name of the song, and then simply drawing their eye to the artist next. Okay. Your final design might look slightly different than mine, that's fine. As long as you have, a strong, simple color scheme, which will work well. As long as you're drawing the eye towards the information you want the viewer to read first. You can see these areas are brighter and it's larger font of text, so I'll read it first. And these areas are not as bright. Also, this text here was just plain white beforehand. The main thing was to use my original Appian Way color, which was the brown that I used, that you can see down here in the swatch, and just to apply that color to the actual text, which you can do so up here. Okay? So you don't have to be an expert in Photoshop to create a nicely designed, simply laid out album cover or DVD cover. It can be very simple, and you can use just a few simple techniques that we've seen here, or transfer modes and a bit of transforming with scale and rotation, to create something that's quite nice and neat. And I think that's the main thing to take from this. Okay, now we'll move on to placing this image inside our CD cover, and that's going to be lying on the ground of the Appian Way. Okay, so our next assignment will be to place this album cover on the CD, which we're going to place on top of the Appian Way. First, we're going to create a new project, which is going to be the same as the others. We'll just go to millimeters, change this to 120 by 120. Our album cover size and our resolution to 300. Make sure it's still at that. Okay, now we're going to open up the other files we need. We need the CD case cover, which we're going to use, and we'll also need our Appian Way. So this is our picture of our whoever that is on the Appian Way. Now we're going to unlock this layer by double clicking on it, pressing OK, and we're going to insert it into our final composition. I'm going to unlock this layer as well. So I'm just going to click and drag this in. Now I'm just going to resize this. This image, one thing about resizing images is that you really want to get as high as resolution image as possible. So if I click Control T, the reason for this is if I increase the size of an image too much, or it isn't the same size as my actual canvas resolution, that'll start to pixelate and I'll lose quality. But this image is large enough to be able to do that. Just about. Okay. Click Enter to apply that transformation. Now you might also want to skew this image. So that means to make it seem larger at the front, that it's going into the distance. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and go to Skew. Now if I zoom out a little bit, left clicking will zoom in. If I hold down Alt and click, it'll zoom out for me. I'm just going to go back to Edit, Transform, Skew. I'm going to skew this image in like this. here. Nearly there. Okay, and I'm just going to apply that by pressing enter. Now if I double click on the hand tool here, it'll bring me back in to full screen. Now the next thing I want to do, I have in my image 0101 date stamp. So I want to use the clone tool, which I can find here, to clone out this part of the image. So with my clone tool I can increase it and decrease it like my brush. And what I'm going to do is hold down Alt and it'll select an area that I want to copy. So Alt click, Alt left click. And then just left clicking, I can just brush over areas that I want to change. Okay, I'm just going to do this quickly. Okay, alt clicking different areas. Try not to alt click areas that you've already gone over, or else things will start to blur too much. Okay, so that's not too bad. Now I'm going to apply an adjustment layer. So if I go into layer, new, layer, adjustment layer, new adjustment layer, and I go into hue saturation, click OK. I'm just going to take down the saturation of this image a bit. Taking down the saturation because I want this to be secondary in the background to my actual CD that I'm putting in, so to concentrate the viewer's attention to the CD. We still want a tiny bit of color in there, and bring down the lightness a tiny bit. Okay, and I'm also going to add an adjustment layer of, I'm going to add some levels in. So I'm going to take my levels down. Sorry, if I go into the actual layer, image, I'm going to take my midtones down a bit. I'm going to take my shadows down a bit as well. Okay, that should do it. And that's your background ready. Our next step now is to use our CD case image, which that isn't it. We have it here. Okay, so what we're going to do is use the pen tool to actually cut this out. Now if we click on the pen tool here, make sure in your options up here that you're not clicked on shapes, because we're actually going to create a path, not a shape. So make sure you're clicked on paths. And we're going to go around the outside of our CD case here and create a path around the outside. And you can see I have a little curve here, and if I just left click and hold down, I can create a little curve there for my path. That's the reason for using the paths instead of using our selection tools, because it's we have more options for creating curves. Okay. Now to see where this actual path is, we can see that we have our layers palette here. Just going to unlock this again. We have our channels and we have our paths, so we can see our paths inside here. Now if I hold down Control and left click on this work path here, it'll give me a selection. So with this selection I can either go back into my layers palette and hit Control J, which will put my CD case on its own layer, as so, and then I can just click and drag this layer into my final piece. So what I'm going to do now, Control T or Edit Transform, and just resize the CD case to somewhere around, maybe a tiny bit smaller, somewhere